Greetings, legends, and I have been watching Umbrella Academy this weekend, and I have to say that I was basically uninterested in this property until the show came out, and because of it, it got me really interested. I think the world is very unique, and it seems to borrow inspiration from a ton of different comics. That being said, my curiosity was piqued, so I went ahead and crushed the entire comic series in one day. Umbrella Academy is a bit unconventional in the way it's arranged. Currently, the series consists of 3 different miniseries, each with 6 issues for a total of 18 total comics. At the time of this video's recording, the latest series, Hotel Oblivion, is nearing the end of its run, and I wanted to start out a series on explaining the comic book origins and powers of these characters. I want to start out today by covering one of the most interesting characters in the show and in the comics, Vanya Hargreaves, aka Number 7, the White Violin. Vanya, like everybody else in the Umbrella Academy, was born unexpectedly on the same day. What's interesting about her and the others' birth was that none of the women who gave birth to these children were pregnant before that day. They conceived, carried, and gave birth within a matter of minutes. What is more interesting is that the children born on this day all seem to have some special type of ability. 43 superpowered individuals were born on the same day around the world. Vanya, like her siblings, was found and adopted by billionaire Sir Reginald Hargreaves. And keep an eye out for his individual video because it's going to be very interesting for those of you who want to learn more about the character that's only really hinted about in the show. Seeing as the majority of the origins and background stories of the children who make up the Umbrella Academy are told through flashbacks, and they are quite scarce, we don't really have a lot of information on Vanya's life growing up. We know that throughout her life, her adopted father wasn't particularly fond of her, nor was anybody else in the family. He was quite insistent that she was unremarkable in every way. In one panel, he referred to her as utterly useless. Sir Reginald Hargreaves was kind of a dick and extremely blunt about his impression of her. We also know that her closest relationship within the family was with Diego, the Kraken, number 2, with whom she shared a common feeling of being an outsider with. They also apparently formed a punk rock duo for a time. When Vanya was 10 years old, the Umbrella Academy was unveiled to the world to stop zombie robot Gustave Eiffel and the rampaging Eiffel Tower in Paris. In a theme that would continue for the majority of her young life, Vanya was left out of the mission. She was forced to watch from the sidelines with her father aboard the family ship the Minerva. Instead of saving the world, she was told to focus on her very mediocre playing of the violin, the one talent she did seem to possess. I don't remember if, in the comic books, she spends her young life into adulthood on antidepressants, but in the show she does, but we'll get a little bit more into why that's important later. As time progressed, Vanya developed a bit of a complex and grew to despise her superpowered siblings. During the events of the first Umbrella Academy story, Apocalypse Suite, Vanya and the rest of the siblings were brought home due to the death of her father. When Diego and his sister Allison, the Rumor, are particularly mad at her for a tell-all book that she wrote about the Umbrella Academy, the home that they grew up in, and her subsequent treatment, as well as their father. Vanya leaves one evening, and she takes a phone call from a mysterious person. The person invites her to the Icarus Theater. When she arrives, she steps foot on stage, and from the darkness of the theater, a voice asks her to play the violin. Despite not having played the violin for 12 years, she plays until she breaks a string. At the end of her piece, the lights go up and she meets the Orchestra Verdantum. Their leader and conductor explains that the orchestra was a sect that wanted to bring about the end of the world through music, and they want Vanya to join them. The conductor explains that he's been looking for a very special violinist with a certain power inside of them, and the power to bring about the end of the world by playing a piece of music called the Apocalypse Suite that he had written. Vanya, fairly disgusted, leaves and tells them not to follow her. Vanya returns to her family, but they're locked in a battle with Dr. Terminal. When she arrives, she tries to help, but only makes the situation worse by being viewed as a liability. Diego specifically is extremely harsh with her. Vanya is emotionally crushed. The culmination of a life being treated like shit boils up, and she decides to return to the Icarus Theater and join the orchestra. The conductor explains to her that her father had been experimenting on her and found a way to suppress her true power. It's now unveiled that Vanya was actually the most powerful member of the Umbrella Academy, and due to her immense powers, a series of mental blocks were put in place to prevent her from using her powers. That, combined with a lifetime of reinforcing the idea that she's worthless and useless on a daily basis, paints a very clear picture that it was always about suppressing her true power. The conductor is happy to oblige her return and quickly goes about forcing her into a medical procedure designed to unlock her latent potential. When she undergoes the procedure, she awakens as the White Violin, with the ability to channel massive destructive power through her music. She immediately kills the conductor. She returns to the academy and begins destroying everything, including a statue of her dead brother Ben, number 3, the Horror. After a brief discussion with her family butler and pseudo-guidance counselor Pogo, she kills him as well. And the rest of the Umbrella Academy arrives, but prove helpless in the face of her power. She uses her ability to cut her sister Allison, the Rumor's vocal cords, rendering her speechless and also powerless. From here, she begins the Apocalypse Suite, a song designed to pull meteorites from the moon into the Earth, destroying it. In the last-minute move of desperation, Vanya's brother Klaus, aka the Seance, channels the dead spirit of their father Reginald Hargreaves. He goes on about his normal routine of belittling Vanya, which creates a momentary lapse in her playing. During this opening, number 5 shoots her in the head. The Seance proceeded to use his telekinesis to stop the meteorites and save the world from the apocalypse. The world doesn't end, but a tremendous amount of damage is done to the Earth and its population. Also, side note, Seance didn't actually channel Reginald Hargreaves, he just faked it, since he said that his father's spirit was way too stubborn to actually be channeled back to the world. But Vanya doesn't die. Vanya is left unable to walk or even remember her family. It's believed that slowly over time these functions will return. She isn't let off the hook scot-free though. Instead, her sister, the Rumor, still bitter that Vanya cut her throat and essentially made her powerless, forces her to watch non-stop coverage of the death and chaos she created around the world. Eventually, despite the fact that she tried to destroy the world, the family recognizes that their father as well as their own actions brought this upon themselves. The family, as well as Diego and the Rumor, start the long process of trying to forgive her. During Hotel Oblivion, Vanya starts to form a bond with her mother being a robot humanoid that her father built to accompany and take care of the kids. When her father died, the robot starts forming its own way of handling the children, and through a series of tough love moments, Vanya is forced into a position where it's essentially sink or swim. As time progresses, it appears that Vanya's recovering is advancing much more rapidly under the tutelage of her mother, and she even learns how to walk again. Ultimately, where she goes from here is unknown. One common theme with the Umbrella Academy videos is going to be a lot of this idea that we don't really know what's going to come next. After all, as of right now, there just aren't that many issues. What's next for Vanya is anyone's guess, but it appears that she's making a recovery and wants to be a valuable member of the team, or at least earn their respect and forgiveness. Vanya's powers, however, are fairly straightforward. I outlined them earlier, but again, she was believed to be powerless her whole life until the conductor of the orchestra unlocks them. After that point, she's able to channel the musical notes she plays on the violin into tremendously destructive blasts. We see her use her powers to cut the conductor in half, cut Rumor's throat, blow Pogo's brains out of his head, and she nearly destroys the planet by causing the Apocalypse Suite. It does seem like her power with training could be unimaginable in scale. And that is about it for Vanya and this video. The character in the comics is pretty similar to the one in the TV show, but only time will tell where her story goes in the future. She's an extremely interesting character, and she reminds me of mutants from the X-Men learning how to use their powers. Sometimes you turn into a good guy, sometimes you turn into a bad guy, and sometimes there's redemption. So I hope you learned a lot, and this is just the beginning of the iceberg for Umbrella Academy videos, so if you want to see more, please subscribe because we will have more coming soon. Also, if you're already a subscriber, or even if you're new and want to support us, consider becoming a member by clicking the join button below. We have a ton of cool membership perks. Also, check out our insane Discord server where you can meet tons of other comic and comic book movie and TV fans. That link is in the comment section and in the description. This has been Nick with Key Issues, and you know the motto, comics over everything.